Welcome to Chai Pe Kharcha, where we have conversations on personal finance among four NRI professionals working at tech firms. Think of these like water cooler chats you have at the office. Only this time, you will have Ishan, Madhvesh, Rohit, and Siddharth as colleagues you will be listening into. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. We are not financial experts. The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult with a qualified financial professional if you need financial advice. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the new episode of Chai Pe Kharcha. NRI is talking about personal finance matters. This week, we'll be talking about tools and automations that we use for making investment decisions. Note that the last episode was mainly focused on tools and automations for tracking expenses, though we did mention investments, but this will be focused on the stuff we do purely for investment. Cool. Madhesh, do you want to start this?
In terms of tracking my investments, my go-to tool is Google Sheets because it gives me a full picture of all the different channels of investments that I pursue, like stocks, mutual funds, even bonds. And at times I also include my like hard transactions like gold, etc., to have a single view of all my investments. So Google Sheets. And the biggest advantage with that is that you can directly quote the latest price automatically, which gives you a view of like what was your investment price versus what's the current price. In addition to that, I use certain websites to help me make investment decisions like TradingView, which is really good for charts. I also use other normal websites like Money Control to get more news regarding a particular stock. And I also use other websites like screeners, which can help you to screen for certain predetermined stock features. So yeah, I think Google Sheets is my go-to tool.
Cool. You want to
Yeah,
talk about it?
I think for my investment tracking, what I use is Excel sheets primarily, but there are different parts which I track differently. So, for example, my investment portfolio is partly in India, partly here in Singapore, and partly in the US. What I use for keeping track of everything, like my entire global portfolio net worth, all investments, is an Excel. In India, I have connected all of my investments in a single app. So I don't have to log into different websites or different portals to understand what's happening कि यार म्यूचुअल फंड में क्या चल रहा है या इंडिविजुअल स्टॉक्स में क्या चल रहा है या मेरे कुछ एफडी है या बैंक में मेरा कैश पड़ा हुआ है. There's an app called, I think I referenced it in a previous episode also, IND Money. So that has pretty good features and like integrations. So जैसे मेरा ICICI बैंक में account है, it can automatically pull the account balance from my ICICI bank account. मेरे मल्टीपल फंड हाउसेस में म्यूचुअल फंड्स ले रखे हैं. So the app can automatically connect with the fund house and automatically pull my mutual fund portfolio within its system. So for all of my India portfolio, I use the app and then I go through the effort of manually noting down and then I also have different portals through which I track other investments. But ultimately, personally, the way I keep track of all my investments is through the Excel. I do that exercise on a monthly basis. And the reason I intentionally don't automate any further is because it gives me an opportunity every month to think about asset allocation, to think about if there is extra cash that I have that I want to invest, or to maybe think about things which are already super overvalued and I want to sell off. So the manual tracking actually helps me to be very intentional about it, and that's what I use.
So for me, since I'm primarily invested only in equities and cash. I don't have too many other assets to track. I am primarily using Google Sheets right now to keep a track of where I am, what I'm doing. And even for future investments that I might want to do, or something I might identify, I idly keep it there with a price target in mind for which where I might want to enter into the investment. The good part is Google Sheets has some amount of automation in itself where you can, with formulas, keep a track of what the current price of an asset or price of a stock is. And that kind of helps me keep a track of if a price point has been reached where I want to buy or sell.
I do this on Google Sheets as well. And as I mentioned in the last episode, on the dashboard that the bank provides. Uh, but I will just plug in on a automation that I was trying out very recently, 3 4 months back, and I've written a blog post about it as well. We'll include it in the show notes, where you could automate drastic increase or decrease in the stocks that you've invested in. बहुत हिलता है प्राइस में, so you'll get an email and you'll get news articles related to that stock. So that is one automation that I've been using more recently. But I definitely don't use automation for making investments themselves. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि प्राइस अगर बेसिकली सम बेस्ड ऑन सम रूल्स, अगर एक पर्टिकुलर स्टॉक का एक पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट तक प्राइस उठता है या गिरता है, तो आई ऑटो बाय और ऑटो सेल, which I have which I have tried to set up, but over time realized that that might be too risky. You can also, again, non-pro trip, you can use Backtrader to test this out. Backtrader is a Python library which allows you to test any of your investment strategy. So you can use it. I have tried to use it, hasn't worked very well for me. But someone who's really invested in that sort of a thing can spend more time on it.
But does someone who needs to use it require any kind of programming knowledge, or is this available for anyone who is interested in investing?
बेसिक, वेरी बेसिक, यानी बेसिक इनफ कि आप अगर डे टू डे कंप्यूटर यूज कर रहे हो तो आपको आ ही जाएगा थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ने के बाद. It's not difficult at all. Especially now with the tools available, ChatGPT, very steep learning curve. But yeah, this is what I use.
I saw this
Have-
video on YouTube, which basically the title of the video was Chat GPT Trading Strategy 19,000% return. I started watching the video and then intentionally stopped it because I don't trust myself to do good trading. I have tried in the past and failed. खराब होगा, and I'm going to go and give it a shot, and then I will end up losing some money. But the point I was trying to make is apparently there are a lot of these chat GPT strategies that are being shared very broadly. I don't know what is the truth in terms of how well they work or don't work. So maybe like a disclaimer with any strategy, I think is good for us to provide. Ki, boss, do your own analysis. Your own money is at risk. Don't take foolish decisions. अपना दिमाग लगा के ही कुछ invest करना for anybody who's listening.
Agree. In fact, this is a interesting point as well of trading versus investing, which this might not be the episode for that topic, but I will touch upon it. Ki automation is much more prevalent in the trading side of things as opposed to investing, and
Yep.
I think Apancharo are mostly into investing, so that might not come up as often. Yeah, very interesting to learn about.
And the number of tools available for that is humongous actually. So we can dedicate 2 episodes to it. Rohit, I had a question for you.
Over.
My only apprehension while using apps like IND Mini or like the other apps which can consolidate all our investments is that I am a bit wary about my privacy and data. So that's why I'm not saying that Google Sheets is like a very efficient way there, but at least I have control on what I put in the sheet versus not. But when I like connect my different apps to IND Money or like other apps, it has access to all my savings, etc., portfolio. So
Yeah.
I know like you would have done a lot of research. Do you want to like share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. My answer to that is basically that convenience comes at a price. In this instance, that price happens to be letting go of some amount of privacy and security in terms of your financial data. If it is a well known, well respected, long lasting app, I would definitely not recommend people to try an app which has just listed on the Play Store yesterday. But if it is something that has been around for a while, it's worth looking at it from the perspective of what are you willing to let go for that extra amount of convenience. And for some people, that trade off might be positive. For some people, that trade off might not be positive. So, when I did my research, the most I could get to in terms of depth of understanding what that trade off can be is कि यार ये मेरा डेटा लेके मेरे को इंश्योरेंस बेचेगा या मेरे को कोई लोन बेचने का ट्राई करेगा या मेरे को बोलेगा कि ये म्यूचुअल फंड आपका बेकार है आप ये दूसरा म्यूचुअल फंड ले लो एंड सो ऑन राइट आई वर्क विद एन एडवाइजर सो आई evaluate at least 2 to 5 investing ideas every single week. I send them to my advisor. He says no to everything. And then I just stick to the plan that he has given for me. That doesn't mean I stop evaluating new investments and new opportunities. And sometimes he will give me like a green light and say, यार, this looks really interesting. थोड़ा और research कर ले. और अगर सही लग रहा है तो घुस जा. So that's how I make decisions from that perspective. कि यार, I don't think an app is going to be able to influence me by saying कि तू ये mutual fund ले ले या ये loan उठा ले वगैरह. I feel like I have developed that amount of discipline within my own behavior. So definitely there is a risk. It is worth evaluating. You need to be able to trust the app to let them access your financial information. The only last point I can add to that is if your actual systems where the money is being kept are secured with basic stuff, strong passwords, two-factor authentication, password recovery, email, etc., then an app accessing the information and just getting the numbers out of your bank or out of your mutual fund portfolio, the risk of that is usually very minimal. That's what I have understood. But again, similar to earlier point, everybody must do their own due diligence before taking up or before revealing any financial information.
I have a slightly counter thought process too. I agree with most of what you said, Rohit.
Yeah.
एक जो last part है कि the maximum risk is minimal because your passwords are secure and you have two factor and all of those.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. Mainly because अब मैं मेरे काफी साल मैंने साइबर सिक्योरिटी में काम भी किया है उस कारण से थोड़ा ज़्यादा पैरानोया भी है बट अ लॉट ऑफ दैट इंफॉर्मेशन सो देयर आर टू रिस्क वेक्टर्स एक तो जैसे आपने बताया कि आईएमडी मनी ही यूज़ करेगा वो इंफॉर्मेशन आपको कुछ बेचने के लिए या वो सब के लिए
Right.
दूसरा है कि आईएमडी मनी इज कॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड बाय अ malicious actor that malicious actor can use that information for social engineering attacks which can be of very sophisticated nature. तो रिस्क तो है बट आई अग्री विद योर होल प्रीमिस दैट it comes at a cost of convenience which is true with anything cyber security related though उसमें but I'll also touch upon one point that you mentioned and we might or might not have another episode on this but I also work with a financial advisor. It's not a tool for making financial but it is a person that we use to get advice from and these guys are in the industry day in day out and they're looking at stuff that we'll not have time to look at.
Right.
So That's also a valid and very important point to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. On the topic of tracking though, and we can go into, I think there might be an episode in future where we can talk about the merits of having an actual human financial advisor attached to your investment decisions. But on the topic of tracking, when all of you mentioned you are using Google Sheets, what aspects of your investment are you tracking? Like, for example, I don't track returns. I just track the current value of my investments, and I check the distance from the goal that I have in mind of reaching whatever X amount of money. That's pretty much it. I have no idea which mutual fund is giving me 20% return or which FD is giving me 5% return. I don't track that. But how do you guys think about this, or how do you guys actually track this?
I am very diligent about this actually. Most of my investments are in individual stocks spread
Okay.
across different countries. So I want to see the return percentage whenever actually I want to. Doesn't mean that I open the sheet every day and like keep checking or refreshing it. But as and when I make a purchase for a particular stock, I go to the sheet and I enter it.
Yep.
This also helps me to track at an individual level, like what was my entry price, and like if I sell it, like what's my CAGR and XIR are going to be for that particular stock. And this also gives me a one picture view of all the different investments. Right, like I might have some in the US stocks, some in the Singapore stocks, or some in like India, but I also convert that based on the latest conversion rate for the currency, and I view it in a single currency format so that I know like what's the current net worth. And I also include my debts, if any, into the sheet so that I know like the actual net worth as of
Yeah.
that instance. So I'm very diligent in this aspect, but it just
That,
gives me a good full picture view of all my different investments.
I think that's pretty hardcore, dude. I feel like for me to get to that level will take another month of figuring out how to run those numbers. Anyone
Well,
else want to?
actually,
Oh yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, if you just hit the right template that is very comfortable for you, and it
Yeah,
does take some setup time, but once you have it set it up, it's quite easy to manage.
yeah,
The
that's
initial setting up part is what.
Yeah, I have also tried a few times to set up things the way Madhvesh was talking, to have a tracking sheet. If you invested in multiple countries, try and have a single view of everything. I am also kind of paranoid, having worked in a bank before, of giving all my financial information to anyone, including banks. So there's a certain benefit of having your eggs in different baskets. So there's some investments that happen in one bank and they don't know about the investments that happen in the other. There's a diversification of risk also there. But more importantly, I think from a tracking perspective, unlike, I'm guessing you guys, I check the stock market and my portfolio every day. Not because I intend to buy and sell on a daily basis, but it's just become a matter of habit. It's also kind of, the markets become almost like a game where you're watching things go up and down, which is not probably the right way of dealing with this unless you're trading. But it just keeps you up to date on what's happening in the market if it's really going down on a certain day. So my sheets, which I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to track कि market में हो क्या रहा है. If I have a particular price point, कि मेरे को एक particular stock इस price पे खरीदना है, या मेरे को after this point I believe the stock is overvalued and I should sell at a good time when I want to get out of investment. The sheet kind of helps me on how much money do I have to put into a stock if I want to do it? How much money will I have once I sell the stock? If I'm making a loss on a particular stock, what is my appetite to take a loss? How much of a loss can I take? Basically, so all of those things I kind of code that into the sheet, where when I make a purchase or when I identify a stock which I am interested in buying, I put all those things there. So it just helps me keep that track and stay honest to myself, because if you don't have all of this thought out before you make an investment, the market can play games with you, where when the market is going up, you start feeling like this is great and I will never sell, I'll hold on forever. and when it's going down, you panic sell everything. This just kind of disciplines me in that sense.
I love that.
मेरा तो in my case it is I track for returns only यार. Why मेरे mind में that's a question कि why else would you track your investment? कितना रिटर्न आ रहा है वही देखने के लिए ट्रैक करता हूँ. बट आई ट्रैक म्यूचुअल फंड वाला एंड आई सी इट once in 7-8 months. और स्टॉक भी वो जैसे अभी एक ऑटोमेशन का मैंने बताया वो लगा दिया है. कुछ होगा तो ईमेल आ जाएगा, नहीं तो you don't have to worry about it. Mine is MK's at one end and probably I am at the other end where I do the tracking but very lethargically and very irregularly.
I'll quickly jump on one point you made, like what is the point of investing if we are not tracking the return? I think I partially agree with you. There is a school of thought which basically says that investment returns are of little practical value in real life, right? Purely because if you have invested 10 rupees and you make 5,000% return on that, the most you have is what, 5,000 rupees X amount, which is going to be completely immaterial. So that school of thought basically says that you have, hopefully you have a target amount of money in your mind. Let's say randomly picking out a number, 10 crores. Okay. If you have 10 crores in mind, it doesn't matter how you get to 10 crores. What matters is that you actually get to 10 crores in the time frame that you want to, right? So let's say you have a goal of retiring at 40 with a total amount of net worth of 10 crores. सैलरी आएगा, कुछ आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट रिटर्न आएगा, कुछ आपका एफडी से निकल के आएगा. सो इफ यू आर अ क्रेजी हाई अर्नर, ठीक है, बहुत ज्यादा हाई रिस्क इन्वेस्टमेंट करने की जरूरत नहीं है बिकॉज योर सैलरी इटसेल्फ इज गोइंग टू फुलफिल वॉट एवर यू नीड. एंड द अदर साइड ऑफ इट इज मे बी आपका सैलरी इतना हाई नहीं है, तो वहां पे आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट रिटर्न्स विल मेक अप फॉर द गैप. बट अल्टीमेटली योर गोल इज टू हिट 10 crore by 40 by one way or the other. So tracking your progress towards 10 crore is more important than tracking individual investment ka return. But of course, why I partially agree with your point is to कि अगर वो individual investment is not performing well and there is an easy switch that can be made to a different investment which will give you better returns and accelerate your journey towards that 10 crore by 40, then of course you need to understand rate of return to get to that point. So I think that's the dilemma, and I started subscribing to that other school of thought, but I'm sure there are pros and cons of it as well.
I'd like to just add one thing to it. Given that I am the one who is most urgently tracking, one important aspect for me to do such is the learning that I get from it. What did I invest into? What I was expecting it to happen, and what it ended up happening. And the main reason I started this was just to learn the different strategies in terms of investment, and also to keep a track of certain long-term investments, which you might forget. For example, I bought some gold as an investment like 5 years back. But like if I have to remember like what was my investment price and like when I am trying to sell it, what would be my return on that? This single view actually gives me that. So these were the two main things that I started with it. But I also agree with the other schools of thought. Like if you are goal oriented in terms of your corpus, then I think what Rohit said makes sense.
Yeah, those are good points.
Yeah, thank you. Good chat again. We've covered a lot of points and went into many tangents. That's a good thing. We'll come back again in the next episode with a new topic connected to personal finance. Thank you for listening in.